Hello, my intention today is to make the video that I wish I had when I was first getting into astrology as an adult, because there is so much to wrap your head around in astrology that it can take a really long time to do that on your own. And so what I wanted to do today is actually make that process a bit easier for you by explaining the basic tools and concepts of astrology and how they fit together and how they relate back to you, what they mean. And the reason that I wanted to do that is because if you are feeling really curious about astrology, if it just keeps coming up, if you just keep encountering the topic of astrology, or you just suddenly feel a bit curious about it, that is an intuitive prompt from yourself that there is something in this system of knowledge, this body of wisdom, that would be helpful for you to begin to look into at this time. And you can do a lot of that on your own. You do not have to go and get an astrological reading by a professional if you don't want to. If you do, my details are below, but this video is really pitched about developing a self-literacy within you through the lens of astrology by giving you the basic understandings of what astrology is about and what it uses so that you can build up your own self-awareness through the wonderful, wonderful tool of astrology. To begin, what's astrology about? What's it focused on? How does it work? Well, astrology is basically, it's the study of you. It's the study of you, the individual, that we as astrologers undertake by looking to the heavens, to the universe, to divine information about who you are and what you wish to experience and contribute and grow through in this lifetime. So astrology uses, its most important tool is a symbolic tool called the birth chart. We use the birth chart to help you understand more about yourself by looking at where the components of your birth chart are, and we'll get to what those components are in a moment. But we use the birth chart to look at where the components of your birth chart were in the universe or in the solar system at the moment of your birth, and how the positioning of those different components of your chart then relate to one another. And the way that these components relate back to you or help you understand yourself is that these different ingredients or components of the birth chart are actually symbolic of the different aspects of yourself. And not only do they symbolize different parts of yourself, but they also show you the relationship between the different parts of yourself and how they interact, whether that's in a really flowing or easy way, or whether they actually have trouble connecting at all. All of that sort of information is contained in the birth chart. And it's a pretty wild concept to think about, the fact that what is happening up there so far away in the solar system is somehow this incredibly pertinent, symbolic snapshot of who you are as an individual. And when you see that it works, you actually come to feel way more connected, not only to life, because you see that you actually fit and you belong, and there is a purpose for your life that locates you within the whole of existence itself, but it also gives you this deeper self-understanding, and that you suddenly have a language to talk about all of the energies and the things that you have been sensing within you, but that you maybe couldn't quite articulate, either because you didn't have the words literally, or you didn't quite have the sense of self-worth or the permission to really embody and express them. One of my favorite astrologers, Anne Ortely, who, if you like predictive astrology, she's the person to go to. She is incredible. She always says, if it's in your heart, it's in your chart. So if there is something that you have been feeling drawn toward or something that you want to do, go and have a look at your birth chart or speak to an astrologer, and they will actually help you find out how you can best express that thing and how you can start moving toward it. So in modern astrology, it's important to note that we don't say that planets or asteroids or aspects or anything else in the birth chart causes anything. That's much more of a sort of ancient/traditional approach to astrology. Modern astrologers prioritize the concept of free will. What we see in the birth chart are the symbols of the planets and the asteroids and so on that over time and through observation have had qualities and meanings and energies and themes and behaviors ascribed to them by astrologers over time. And so you can then look to these symbols inside your birth chart to see what energies are particularly dominant or apparent within yourself. So what is the birth chart? What are the components in the birth chart? What does it refer to, and how does it relate back to you? Basically, your birth chart is a snapshot of the location of each planet, all 10 planets in our solar system, plus all the asteroids, plus the houses and the nodes at the moment of your birth. And by location of each of those things, what we mean is a sign in the zodiac. So a planet placed in, say, the sign of Gemini, whether it be your sun, moon, Mercury, what have you. The reason that this occurs is because the planets and the asteroids are moving through their orbits up in space And as they do so, they are always located within one sign or another. And very importantly, they are also, as they're moving through their orbit, coming in and out of specific angular relationships with other elements in your birth chart. So the planets and the asteroids and the houses and the nodes and the midpoints and all of the other concepts or tools that are included within a birth chart are all forming relationships to one another that are a symbol for how these different aspects of your personality or your life interact with one another. And so your birth chart is made up of multiple components. So as I said, we have the 10 planets. That includes the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Mars, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, putting aside the conversation of what is still a planet and what isn't, and the many, many asteroids that we have in our solar system. There are literally thousands of asteroids in the asteroid belt. Most astrologers, if they do work with asteroids, will tend to have a handful that they will work with. And the planets and the asteroids represent different aspects of you. So, for example, the moon symbolizes your inner world, your emotions, whereas Mercury symbolizes your thinking, your cognition, your communication style, and then Mars would represent your motivation, your willpower, your sex drive, and the style of assertion that you have, the way you kind of put yourself forward in the world. The planets and the asteroids are all actual physical phenomena in space, but your birth chart also includes conceptual or mathematically calculated points like aspects, like the houses and the nodes. The aspects, the houses and the nodes, they don't actually exist in the sky. They are concepts. They are techniques that have been developed by astrologers through observation, sometimes over centuries, to help us glean more information about the person whose chart we are considering. So each component of your chart, that's both the mathematical and the physical, they all fall within one of the 12 signs of the zodiac. So Aries, Taurus, etc., right through to Pisces. So each element of your personality is colored by the sign of the zodiac that it falls into, where it was at the moment that you were born. And your planets and the asteroids and the houses, they will all be scattered across the different 12 signs of the zodiac, but it's not uncommon to have some signs be completely empty, or to have a sign with multiple planets or different elements within that same sign. That's super common. Where you have more than 3, some astrologers say more than 4 planets or elements within a particular sign, we call that a stellium. And that means that there is a particular emphasis on that energy, that sign or zodiacal energy in this lifetime for you. So which particular sign of the zodiac a planet or an asteroid or a node falls into tells us something about that aspect of your personality. So if your Mars, your willpower, is in the sign of Aries, for example, that tells us that the way that you like to assert yourself and your willpower and your drive has qualities associated with the sign of Aries. And it can also tell us about the light and shade, or the positive and perhaps more negative expressions of that aspect of your personality. So for example, if you had your Mars, which is your willpower, what motivates and inspires you, and your sex drive in the sign of Leo, you might then feel called to express either the positive or the negative traits of that Leo Mars energy, depending on, the experiences that you've had in life, as well as your self-awareness, as well as what you believe a situation calls for moment to moment. And so a positive expression of Leo energy, for example, Leo is ruled by the sun, and Leo is a very expressive energy that likes to express itself and shine bright. And in its healthy expression, it likes to shine and express itself for the pleasure of self-expression that it also recognizes is illuminating and nourishing to others. Leo, in its healthy form, likes to express its creativity or its vision or its worldview in order to encourage and inspire others to recognize their own light and to do the same. That's a very healthy expression of Leo energy. So if you have a Mars in the sign of Leo, a lot of those people love to perform. Beyonce, I believe, has her Mars in the sign of Leo, and that's a very common placement for super talented performers. However, Leo also has a shadow side, and you could say that where healthy Leo is like the sun, the planet that rules it, shadow side of Leo is more like a black hole, sucking energy and time and resources and control and power toward it from other people, almost as a way to try and buttress weaknesses in its own sense of self. So everything in your chart, as I was saying before, comes back to free will and self-awareness. It's all about how you choose to work with the energies in your chart. You're never doomed, you're never condemned. The whole point is to learn about yourself and to learn how to express and embody what it is that you actually feel called to be. So we have the planets, the asteroids, and so on, and they are all placed within a particular sign of the zodiac. Then we have another layer of meaning. Every element of your birth chart is not only placed in a sign, it is also placed within a house. And a house represents an area of life. There are 12 of them in astrology, and they cover everything from business relationships, to money, to your career, to your education, to your siblings, to your local neighborhood, to your unconscious. Basically, what a house shows you is if a planet or something else in your birth chart falls into a particular house, it means that that aspect of the personality that is symbolized by that planet or that asteroid or what have you is particularly keen to express itself in that area of life. So for example, if we go back to Mars again, which is your motivation, your inspiration, your passion, if you had a Mars in the 9th house, which is the house of publishing and philosophy and broadcasting, you might have someone who's very motivated to share their ideas through public communication. That would be an obvious expression of Mars in a particular sign placed inside a particular house. So to calculate the houses or your rising sign, which is the beginning of your first house in astrology, and it's the sign that was coming up over the eastern horizon as you were born, you do need an accurate birth time. If someone was born on the same day as someone else but 2 hours apart, they would have a totally different rising sign or a totally different configuration of houses, meaning that their planets would be in different houses, different areas of life to someone else who is born on the same day. But it gets more detailed again because, as I mentioned before, each component in your chart is in relationship, what we call aspects, to everything else in your chart. So in the same way that each part of yourself exists in relationship to the other parts of you, for example, the way your emotional temperament affects your career sector and the way that your career sector affects your emotional well-being or your inner emotional world, the various components of your chart are always in conversation with one another. So these conversations are called aspects, and the type of aspect, the type of angle that they make between them, these different planets or elements of your chart, determines the kind of conversation that these different parts of you are actually having within yourself. If you had a conjunction, if you had two planets that were conjunct one another, which means they're basically top of one another, that means their energy is fused. It combines and expresses itself in a stronger and combined fashion. So if you had Mars conjunct Mercury, Mars being your passion, your willpower, Mercury being the way you think and the way you express and communicate yourself, you might have someone who has a very forceful, powerful way of expressing themselves. Or if you had two planets who were forming an inconjunct, this is an aspect or a conversation occurring between two different parts of you that might actually be quite hard to facilitate. They might actually find it quite hard to speak to one another. They might not find much opportunity to do so because of the way they are positioned in relation to each other within your chart. So, to summarize, your birth chart is a snapshot of the heavens that is basically a blueprint of the raw ingredients and experiences and talents and gifts and challenges and blind spots that you wanted to experience and work through in this lifetime. So the components of your chart, the planets, the asteroids, the nodes, the houses, and so on, they are placed within the signs of the zodiac, Aries, Taurus, etc. And then they are also placed down into the houses or the areas of life, which also fall into a sign. And then the components of your chart are all aspecting or conversing with all of the other parts of you. So I hope that's helpful. As I said at the start, if you have any questions about anything I've covered, please pop them down in the comments section below. And of course, if you are interested in a reading with me, the link to book is below as well. Thank you very much. Goodbye.